The shocking new report that reveals there's been an explosion of anti-Semitic hate in the UK. A record high of more than 4,000 incidents was recorded by the Jewish charity Community Security Trust in 2023. That's up from just under 2,000 in 2022. The surge in cases has been attributed to the Hamas attack on Israel last year, with two-thirds of incidents happening either on or after the 7th of October.
Meanwhile, pro-Palestinian protests continue in the UK, with Labour's Wes Streeting the latest target. A poster stating "Vote for genocide, vote Labour" appeared on a bus stop in the Shadow Health Secretary's East London constituency following a backlash against the party's stance on the Israel-Hamas conflict.
Well, joining us now is Rabbi David Mason, Executive Director of HIAS and JCORE, an organisation which provides a Jewish voice on race and asylum issues in the UK. Thank you so much for joining us, Rabbi. I mean, looking at some of the things that have been taking place over the past few months, let's say since October the 7th, we have had very vocalised anti-Semitism on the streets. We've had attacks on school children outside the school gates. And we're also now seeing things like the posters going up in North Ilford in Wes Streeting's constituency, where people are demanding Labour Party representatives back their calls for a permanent ceasefire. Where do we go from here? How do we essentially put the genie back in the bottle?
So thanks for having me on. It's really good to be on talking about this. It's I think we should also tip our hat to the CST, the Community Security Trust, who've done really good work on measuring what's going on with anti-Semitism. So where do we go from here? It's difficult for people at the moment. There is a greater vulnerability for Jewish people I've known in communities I know for a long time. I think there's a sense of not being surprised about it. It's been rumbling along before the 7th of October. 7th of October's come along and has, in a sense, allowed it to grow. I think one thing is there needs to be a greater realization that if people demonize Israel as a country and people demonize Zionism, which is very important to a large number of Jewish people across the community, that can easily lead to anti-Semitism. It doesn't always have to be, but often it will be or will lead to anti-Semitism in the sense of being offensive to Jewish people. And I think that's something that we just need to think about. We need to hear that from leaders. We need to hear that in universities. We need to hear that in schools. The fact that I know so many people, and I'm probably one of them, who when I travel, when I'm out with other people, I find that I can't talk about Israel because I worry about what others will say. I have a daughter at university who worries about talking to her friends about her connection to the state of Israel because it might lead to anti-Semitism. We can't live like that. And I think it's really important, that we look at that.
I agree with you. So I guess my question to you is, I mean, we're seeing this literally explode out of control. And we know what the latest trigger for this was. Of course, bizarrely, Israel suffers this terrible invasion on October the 7th, endures the genocide of 1,400 innocent Jewish people, innocent Israeli citizens, the most appalling atrocity. And counterintuitively, that has led to an explosion of anti-Semitism in this country. God knows why, but it is happening. What must the government do? This is one of many issues. You see this government not getting a grip of. They've got to do something, surely. I might suggest, this might be controversial, I've been to a couple of these big Palestinian marches, and I've seen the way the police treat pro-Palestinian marchers. They treat them with great sympathy. There was one soon after the October the 7th atrocity when a Jewish demonstration was banned from coming into central London so that the pro-Palestinian march could happen. There seems to me to be a favouritism by the police towards Palestine and not towards Israel, and I think that might be at the root of our problem here.
I think if I could come at it, firstly, politicians of all parties have got to get this right. And we're seeing that at the moment, I think, from the major parties, that there's work to be done in both of them. We've seen that this week with both, right? And I think there's real work to be done there to be clear about how there should be absolute intolerance of demonizing Israel, because we know what that leads to. I think the other thing I'd say also is that in social media, in the world we live in, we often see a emphasis a clarity about the extremes, the people that are breaking the law, who should be dealt with. And it isn't clear that that means everyone thinks that way. I think there's a responsibility actually for the organizers of the marches to be clearer in their messaging, that people at the fringes or people within the marches who are sharing anti-Semitic remarks, talking about from the river to the sea, wearing symbols of terrorism, that should not be tolerated. And I think they have more responsibility, and more work probably needs to be done in talking and dialoguing. We have lost the ability to dialogue in this society. We don't talk. We just spout on social media.
One last point, David. As I say, I went to a few of these marches as a sort of journalist, as an observer, and I saw coppers literally just ignoring people from the river to the sea on their backs, ignoring them chanting jihad. They do seem to turn a blind eye to these infringements, and I would suggest that one way we might begin to tackle anti-Semitism is by instigating a zero tolerance on all of this nonsense.
I think there's been such an avalanche of this stuff, and an avalanche and a coalescing of, I suppose you would say, the left and the far left around, what Israel's doing in Gaza as their thing, that it is possible, and I think it's important probably to give more benefit of the doubt than we're giving, that it just needs a shift in how policing works.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure there's a favour. I don't feel that the police are against me as a Jewish person. I think the CST have a very good relationship with the police, do a lot of work with them, and there is an inherent trust. I just think that these marches have been so often, so many, and sometimes so virulent and difficult and aggressive in some of the phrases and the banners and the chants, that there just needs to be a bit of a shift in how we actually deal with it. And I think that needs to happen at police level.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed out the effect of social media, because anybody with a knowledge of these things knows it's increasingly used in grey zone warfare, and there'll be various hostile states towards Israel churning out anti-Semitic content from bot farms and all the rest of it, and flooding the internet with such things to radicalise people. But it strikes me that we haven't really done anything in this country, at least our politicians, and our Prime Minister doesn't. If you look at what's happened in France, Macron has not only said, that's it, we're banning these pro-Palestine marches, but actually organised a solidarity march in remembrance of the 7th of October, which he attended himself. The German foreign minister took to social media and put out a long video that went on TikTok, that went on Instagram, saying this is not an anti-Semitic country. We will not tolerate it. We're going to wipe out all forms of this hatred. And yet, when I look at our political class, I haven't really seen much conviction to stand up to this cancer from those who really ought to be taking responsibility.
Look, we're a country that does champion freedom of speech and champions it strongly. And I think you'll find many people in the Jewish community, many leaders of the Jewish community, who will, on the one hand, obviously want the freedom to go out and express solidarity with Israel and share against anti-Semitism. There was a really strong demonstration arranged, the Campaign for Anti-Semitism obviously were involved, the Board of Deputies supported, which was about anti-Semitism. So there have been opportunities for Jewish people to be on the street. I've been at that as well. But I think those same Jewish people won't want to take away the right that others have to demonstrate against, if they want, what Israel is doing. So I don't think a march essentially has to be something of hate. It's what happens at the march that's the problem. And so, yeah, there might need to be stronger policing. There might need to be stronger rules in terms of understanding anti-Semitism and how it derives from hatred of Israel and the state. I think that's absolutely right. But the idea would be to still allow people in that British tradition of demonstrating and freedom of speech to let people be on the street. Because I think otherwise you just push it indoors. You push it further into social media than it already is. And it might be counterproductive.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the pro-Palestinian marches should happen. These people have got the right to protest, to demonstrate, just as the Jewish community has, just as we all have. That is important. What I don't want to see again, David, is when there's a pro-Palestinian march and they're all chanting jihad, that the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Samart Rowley, calls for interpreters and Muslim experts to interpret what jihad means, and they come up with a different method. Oh, it doesn't necessarily mean death to all Jews. That is ridiculous, and that's the sort of attitude that I'm a bit worried about. But that isn't to say that I don't think that most of the police do a good job keeping all of our freedoms safe. It was great to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time. Rabbi David Mason there.